Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So today, we're going to take a look at a pending crisis here in America that is going to unfold one way or another and is going to be devastating for millions and millions of Americans and is going to directly affect how they live their lives after coronavirus. Thank you for joining me today. Now, let's start off with a little disclaimer. Before we get into this video today, I want you to be perfectly clear on two things. One, this is not a partisan uh, thing. I'm not trying to make fun of one party over another, political wise. I'm not trying to say that one party is better than the other. They're both nasty. They both do their own thing to serve those who line their pockets with money. Politicians and the government aren't helping anyone. And they certainly have dropped the ball statewide and federal wise in so many areas. First, let's take a look at unemployment or your job comes back. Millions of Americans have applied for unemployment. As of July, the total is over 40 million Americans have applied for unemployment. What you see on your screen here are the states who have processed unemployment claims since the COVID crisis started in March. You will see states all over the board. Good old Virginia is the only one that is at 100% right now. I will update this before this video is released, and the day that this video is released, these will be the proper percentages of all unemployment claims that have been filed. You think that you hear on the news every day that people who are on unemployment are getting $600 from the federal government on top of their unemployment benefits. Some of these states, like South Dakota, have only processed 7% of all unemployment claims. And those people who they've processed, that 7%, are getting that $600. If it runs out and expires at the end of July, they're not going to have to retroactively go back and pay the $600 for the hundreds of thousands of others who have not gotten a dime in unemployment in South Dakota. That federal money just disappears and they never get it. There is nothing that says that they have to pay that money back. They do have to pay retroactive back from the time that the person filed the unemployment benefits. 7% have been processed. The other 93% who have filed since March haven't gotten anything at all. Nothing. They're just that backlogged and that slow at processing. Certain other states, like Washington State, California in certain areas, Nevada, and in Utah, Wyoming, in the West Coast, and then in the East Coast, Florida, New York, Washington, D.C., have halted new claims, putting a stop because of fraud. Fraudulent unemployment claims filed on behalf of somebody who is already receiving unemployment. Basically, someone opened up a second, or the people who were still working, they opened up a new claim for them. Millions of dollars were paid out to people who were never supposed to get it, who never filed for unemployment. They halted it to stop the fraud, but those that who were receiving benefits saw a halt and still haven't seen that money come back to them. That's the government for you. That's the system we have in place. So we know millions of Americans are unemployed right now here in America. And every single week, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, more are applying for unemployment benefits right now, today. The economy has tanked. There is no rebound. We haven't seen this, what has been in the news as millions of new jobs added to the payrolls across America. That's absolutely untrue. For those states that did reopen, some people did get back to work. But as we are rolling back the actual states that are being open and the number of where they're at, the phase, some states went from phase 4 back to phase 2. And places were closed down, so those people who were on unemployment went back to work for a week, a month, and are now back on the unemployment rolls again. So if there was a short-term game, it was wiped out completely. Then those who were also working, who lost their jobs in other fields, in other areas, who had been working all along, who are now unemployed, are new to the unemployment rolls as well. So small spike, decline, back up again with new claims. That's unemployment in America for you, ladies and gentlemen. You've paid into it religiously from all the time that you've been working. You file for it, and you ain't getting duku. You're nothing at all in a lot of circumstances. And a lot of times, the paperwork and the bureaucracy to even get it is so overwhelming that a lot of people just give up. Why even try? You apply for it, you call and call and call, and there are numerous cases across the United States where people have called for 30, 60 days, every single day, to try to file for unemployment, and they can't get through the system because the system is overburdened or broken. And in some states, they've completely gone offline and went back to paper, actually filing unemployment claims by paper. And where are you supposed to go to do that? They closed down all the offices. So you have to go, stand in line 6 feet apart, in queue, in the heat, all day long. Now your kids aren't in school. You can't go to work, so you have to stand in line with your kids just to be able to get in to file for unemployment. This is how the perfect storm, is starting. You have no money. You have no way of paying your bills. You can't pay your rent. You can't be evicted right now. In certain circumstances and in certain states, you may have protection. But how are you supposed to survive? Who's going to put food on the table? The food banks are running out of food. The money that they had in federal assistance is gone in so many states across the United States. How are you going to live? Who is going to feed your children tonight? Are you able to sit at the table tonight and look over at your 4-year-old or 6-year-old child and say, you have food for tomorrow? Then, imagine this. Your governor, your state representative, your congressman, your senator are all eating $1,300, $1,400 steak dinners tonight, paid for by a lobbyist, to make sure that you have a harder time getting back to where you were before. That is the political system that we have in place. You allowed it to happen, I allowed it to happen, and everybody else is just as culpable for allowing it to happen. Now, let's look at evictions. Now you have no money to pay your rent. You've been lucky and you live in an area where the state put a moratorium on evictions. That doesn't mean that the rent goes away. It just means that the landlord can't kick you out on the street tomorrow because you don't have any money. All that rent, all this time from March, April, May, June, July, August, is all going to be due at some point. You were barely making it by with you and your husband and feeding your 2 kids and maybe having a little bit of a nest egg of up to $1,000, because 53% of all renters have less than $1,000 in their savings account at the time this crisis started. That's all gone. It's been wiped away. 53% of all renters, ladies and gentlemen, had less than $1,000 in savings, because they are considered what the U.S. government calls rent burdened. What does rent burdened mean? Means that a large percentage of their take-home pay has been going to pay for rent, utilities, and upkeep on the place where they are were renting, be it a home, an apartment, whatever. Rent prices have gone up. Incomes have gone down since the last housing crisis, or have stayed completely stagnant. And some few tiny little places have seen a $2.30 to $2.60 increase in average income per hour. $2.60. Well, congratulations for all you medium income individuals out there renting. What are you going to do with the extra $17 at every week in your paycheck? Otherwise, it has stayed stagnant or declined. If you live in a home, an apartment, condo, whatever it may be, and you are a renter, and the federal government put a hold on evictions, that only applies to 33% of all properties where someone may be a renter. 33%. The mortgage, the original mortgage on the property, must have been backed by Fannie or Freddie. Sorry. That's the only ones that count. The government put a halt on any evictions or foreclosures on properties that are federal backed by Freddie and Fannie Mac. That's it. If they have a second mortgage, the secondary mortgage on that property, they can still foreclose on that landlord or the owner of that property. That secondary mortgage company could also force the first one, after this is over with, to evict you. That's the truth. There is no protection there. %44 of Latino Americans. These are not illegal aliens. These are people who are of Latino descent, who were born here in America. They may be second, third, fifth, ninth, 12th generation, but they self-identify as Latino Americans. 44% of Latino Americans who are renters say they will not be able to pay rent beyond July. They have exhausted all their resources for paying rent beyond that. 41% of those who self-identify as African American or black. That is their word, their term, their self-identification. 41% answered the survey the same way. They will not be able to pay rent past July. What are they going to go? What are we looking at in total numbers for those who are looking at being out on the street? Are we talking 100,000, 10,000, 6,000? No, what we are talking about is 1 in 5 renters. Ladies and gentlemen, of the 1 in 5 renters who may be evicted at some point once this all settles out, and the federal government, even the Republicans, are arguing amongst themselves and not sure what they want to do. The Democrats are arguing amongst themselves and not sure what they want to do. We elected these people to represent us, and they can't even get together with their own political parties to put forth a bill that they agree on. Don't be fooled right now as to today if you think the Democrats actually have a complete package. They don't, nor do the Republicans. Each one of them will get in front of a news camera tomorrow and say, I've got the answers and I've got the bill, with the other side just fighting, and they won't come to the agreement table with us. Because they add what's called pork to every single one. And then the other ones come in and they slash out all the pork, and then, well, they want to add that pork back in, but this one won't. 1 in 5 Americans, ladies and gentlemen, who are renters in America, are looking at eviction once this is done. How many Americans does that actually represent? Ladies and gentlemen, that comes to 23 million Americans. Let that sink in for a minute. During the housing crisis, in the housing bubble that burst, 17.5 million Americans lost their homes or their places of residency and were suddenly homeless. 17.5. During all that, 23 million Americans, those at the lowest ranks of socioeconomic levels, are going to be affected the most. 23 million. Not the people who lost their homes because they were speculating that the prices were going to keep on going up and they were going to get rich because they owned their own house, or they had a secondary home, or a third, or a bungalow somewhere, or vacation homes, or some vacation properties. Those people lost their homes and didn't become homeless. 23 million Americans who are renters are looking at losing their only place of residency once this all unfolds. Is there a knight in shining armor out there who's going to sweep in and make all this better for everyone? No. No, the president doesn't want to sign a bill that's going to give more protection to renters, that's not going to line the pockets of mortgage companies and banks. The Democrats won't agree to a bill that will line the pockets of the banks and mortgage companies. And the rent won't go away. It won't. Every single uprising, like the hashtag cancel rent, movement, went nowhere. Several bills were put forth. The most popular bill that went forth was put forth by a Democrat from Minnesota, but she was shot down because she's Muslim. I hate to tell you that, but that's the actual facts, ladies and gentlemen. I checked on it 6 times, and I read so many different articles about it. They started a campaign to call your senator and your congressman to tell them not to sign the Cancel Rent Act and the bill that was making its way through. They had over 30 other backers of the bill. Call your senator. Tell them not to vote on this. Ignore the bill. Don't vote yes, don't vote no. Just ignore it. Make sure it never makes it to actual vote. They did that. The rent's still there. This rent still has to be paid. Rent doesn't get paid. Landlords, homeowners don't make money. They don't get their money. How many homeowners are looking at losing their secondary home? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's their secondary home, or they have a bunch of other properties that they rent out. 1 in 12. If it's a second home that they use as a rental property, 1 in 12 could look at foreclosure, losing their homes. 1 in 12, ladies and gentlemen. And in case you're wondering right now, because you're a troll or you just don't believe anything that I have to say, I'm going to now give you the sources right here, right now in this video, for where I got all my information. On the statistics for those who cannot pay past the month of July, the U.S. Census Bureau survey, because we're currently doing the U.S. Census, and that was one of the questions that the U.S. Census Bureau, since they are currently in service, asked. The other source is the JCHS, Joint Center for Housing Studies by Harvard University and Wake Forest. That was on the percentage and the statistics behind the percentage of renters who are rent burdened, along with those who are going to be in foreclosure because they are going to be, or they will lose their homes because the renters are not being able to pay. Next, the Emergency Housing Protection and Relief Act of 2020. The Office of Emergency Housing and Protection and Relief Act is the next resource for where the information that I'm talking about is just coming from. Next is the Americans with Disabilities Act and the VA and other joined, and there's like 12 of them that I resourced part of it from. 16.5 million homeowners who own a second home who rent out that second home. 1 in 12 of them will lose their home. So now I've given you the information. It's truly a problem of both parties, political parties here in America. It's a problem of our government, and it's a problem that me and you and everybody, even if you don't rent a home, if you just pay a mortgage, it's going to affect all of us, and it very well could be one of the final nails in the coffin. Because if we barely made it through the first housing crisis and the fallout from that, but now we're going to see 23 million Americans who are at the bottom end of the socioeconomic level. They don't have money to fight back. Where are they going to go? One good thing is, as of 2017, all three major credit bureaus here in America, but all three credit bureaus have stopped allowing evictions to show up on your credit report. That's good news. The bad news is the federal government then loaned out millions of dollars for people to start up businesses to actually pick up right where that information was dropped into the trash can. If you got evicted, it didn't go on your credit report, and the next landlord would never find out about it. But now there are companies, they're clearinghouse companies, that report on nothing but evictions and keep your information to report to the next person. You get an eviction on your record, what a likelihood is that you're going to get affordable housing in the next place. And on top of that, since 1990, we have demolished millions of affordable housing units here in America to put up high-rise condominiums, other things that were beneficial to cities. We bulldozed them for hospital expansions. We bulldozed them to put up sports arenas. Since 1990, millions of affordable housing units are gone, and they've never been replaced. Right now, there are over 5 million Americans who live on the street every single night, who were the working poor, who don't have the protection anymore. Try to raise yourself up out of a homeless shelter with your children. It's hard. It's damn near impossible to ever get back to middle class if you get that far down. And 23 million Americans are looking at it right now. And the federal government and state governments that we relied on, that we hoped would be our backbone to help us, to lift us up in a time of crisis like this, are the ones who are failing us. Only a couple of states have processed 100% of all unemployment claims. You get that money. That money comes in. You better put 100% of it in the savings account. Because the landlord can come after you and evict you. He can evict you for not only just not paying rent during this entire crisis while you're unemployed. Maybe he could say, well, your son or daughter, or both of them, came home from college because college was closed down all this time. They're not on the lease agreement. Goodbye. Get out. I'm evicting you. You have 30 days. Where are you going to go? And hopefully, by the time all this happens, all those, unemployment claims will have been processed. But we have no faith in that. We can't have any faith in that. We're looking at almost 6 months since the unemployment claims initially started rolling in some states, like South Dakota, are still at only 7% processed. It's pathetic. But that's a society that we all ignored. That's a part of the world that we all ignored and we thought we'd never have to rely on. But here we are. Where do we go from here? There's no white knight in shining armor that's going to gallop in and save us. Thank you for joining me today.